Hello and welcome once again. Today we'll be looking at Hadrian's Wall as it runs from Mile Castle 49 just to the west of Oswald Roman Fort. In this section you get two walls for the price of one. Quite an amazing stretch of wall and well worth visiting. This part of the 80 Roman mile long Hadrian's Wall is in the county of Cumbria, just west of the village of Gilsland. It's well worth parking at Gilsland village and then walking up to Oswald Fort on one of the best preserved sections of Hadrian's Wall. Highlights include one Roman fort, two mile castles, three turrets and a bridge abutment. East of Oswald Fort lies Mile Castle 49, known as Harrow's Scar. Its remains are still preserved in the landscape just at the top of the ridge above the River Irthing. Observant walkers passing through the Kissing Gate might notice that Hadrian's Wall at this point has a distinct kink in it, moving away to the north. This slight change in direction can be seen heading off to Oswald. The north ditch at this particular point is very visible in the landscape also. It was at this point, when Hadrian's Wall was built in around AD 122, that two building styles were used to construct the wall. One was in turf to the west, and to the east the wall was built in stone. There are several theories about why Hadrian's Wall was split in two and built in turf and stone at either end. The first theory is that there wasn't enough mortar available to build in stone, or stone for that matter, at the Cumbrian end of the wall. The second theory relates to the tribes in the western area being a lot more hostile to the Romans, requiring a wall to be thrown up very quickly, possibly over just one season for the Roman army. Both theories hold a lot of merit. I'm particularly in favour of the second, the tribes being hostile at the western end of the wall, due to the fact that many of the mile castles at that end, particularly Mile Castle 46 and Mile Castle 48, were built very early in the construction of Hadrian's Wall. It seems from the end of Hadrian's reign in the AD 130s, the wall at this section began to be rebuilt in stone. The original idea of Hadrian's Wall was to have mile castles and turrets on Hadrian's Wall, and the forts would sit back on the Steingate Roman road, forts including Vindolanda. A decision was then taken to build forts along Hadrian's Wall itself. The creation of a fort where Oswald stands now meant the end for Turret 49A. Although the original wall was built at this point in turf, the turrets were all built in stone. Only faint traces of this structure were found by archaeologists. To get an idea of how high and what the turf wall would have looked like, you can visit the Tully House Museum in Carlisle, where they have a replica. The wall itself probably had more turf and less spotlights and benches, but you got a good impression. The turf wall was roughly 20 feet wide at its base and rose up some 12 to 14 feet and topped off with a timber rampart. The soldiers would have cut turf into squares and then laid them grass side down in layers. The turrets were built of stone, but the mile castles were built of timber like the wall. In the AD 130s it was decided to rebuild Hadrian's Wall in stone. This time the builders took a more northerly route, possibly to give themselves more room to create a village and settlement outside the fort. The defensive line wasn't as good in the valley, but the Romans took a pragmatic approach. With the stone wall dividing and moving to the north, it's still possible to see the original line of the turf wall. Here you can see the north ditch, and to the left the slighted remains of the turf wall. On these slopes stood the remains of Mile Castle 50 in its original turf form. The fence line, the marshy ground, marks the line of the north ditch of the turf wall. The turf wall itself now can't be seen as it's been slighted, but in low light it occasionally shows up. Excavators have revealed the site of Mile Castle 50, and the evidence shows that the remains were buried carefully in pits, including a wooden inscription which would have stood above the door. Only this thin sliver of wood now survives. We know from other stone inscriptions found on Hadrian's Wall, and also the formulaic style the Romans used to create these texts. The inscription dates to the time of Hadrian, includes the governor at the time, Aulus Platorius Nepos. Behind Hadrian's Wall ran the Vallum, which consisted of a long, deep ditch with a north and a south bank. This was probably to protect Hadrian's Wall from raiding parties from the south, which was still regarded as relatively hostile in places. It also probably demarcated the military zone. Although faint west of Bird Oswald, a better section can be seen at Limestone Corner further east. Moving the stone wall to the north meant that new turrets needed to be created along this section. So the old turret 49B was demolished and the new 49B was created on the new line. This means the turret is one of the youngest on Hadrian's Wall, even though it still is nearly 1900 years old. The north ditch survives on the north side of the modern road. Over its long life, turret 49B had 4 floors, 2 of clay and 2 of flags. Excavations reveal that all of the phases of reflooring, the turret had a half in one corner or another. Also pottery was located and window glass. The entrance to the turret was at the eastern end. There would have been a wooden door pivoted at the top and bottom, which would have opened inwards. The troops would have manned the turret on rotation from Bird Oswald Fort, probably up to 8 of them. A ladder would have reached the second storey, probably based on a stone platform at the base. Unlike many turrets which fell out of use in the early 3rd century, archaeologists discovered that this particular turret had been in use until the 4th century at least. Well, I suppose if you'd been out getting weathered for nearly 1900 years, you look rather eroded as well. So lovely Roman good luck symbol, phallus, just west of Bird Oswald Fort. Well, thanks again for watching. Please like and subscribe, it just helps me make more content, and see you on the next trip.